Hello, Mr. Anthony, how are you? I'm very excited, and you know this is a very important day for welcome everybody.
It's a very important.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Very important day.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, honorary guests, my name is Stuart Temple. I will be with you here at the Energy Disputes Arbitration Centre launching assembly. On behalf of Edac here in Turkey, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all participants of the launching assembly. Welcome, everybody. We are honoured and delighted to bring you all together for this event. This programme consists of two sessions, the opening ceremony and the webinar on energy disputes resolution in the age of COVID-19. I would like to introduce members of the International Board and members of the National Board at Edac. The members of the International Board are Mr. Süleyman Bozca from Turkey, Mr. Professor Mads Andernas from Norway, Mr. Professor Peter Cameron from the UK, Mr. Professor Golahan Elias from Nigeria, Mr. Professor Munir Munirazuman from the UK, Mr. Minas Kachadorian from Egypt, Ms. Sarah Kolilat Aranjo from Dubai, Mr. Professor Muthukumaraswamy Sonraja from Singapore, and Mr. Professor Don Wallace from the USA. Welcome to the International Board members. From the National Board, we have again Mr. Süleyman Bozca, Mr. Professor Murat Atala, Mr. Ibrahim Ermenek, Mr. Yusuf Günay, Mr. Shukru Saraç, Mr. Selami Erdem Uras, Mr. Yüksel Yalova, and finally Mr. Alper Çağrı Yilmaz. Welcome to the National Board members. Now, in the first session, I want to give the floor to Attorney at Law, Mr. Süleyman Bozca, the Chairman of the Energy Disputes Arbitration Centre. Mr. Bozca, if you would be so kind, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Temple.
You're welcome.
Dear Edac board members, dear arbitrators and consultants, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to welcome you to the launching assembly of the Energy Disputes Arbitration Centre and greet you all with respect. Following the International Energy Arbitration Symposium we held in Istanbul in 2013, our belief that an effective and reputable arbitration center focused on the energy sector will make a much greater contribution to the settlement of disputes that arise in the energy sector led us to the idea of establishing the Energy Disputes Arbitration Center. We planned to hold this meeting in the first quarter of 2020, but we had to postpone it due to the COVID-19 outbreak, which has impacted most nations on the planet. As the effect of COVID-19 continues to increase, we decided to hold this meeting with the aid of the technology, and I thank you all for your understanding and support. Today, Edac starts its activities aiming to be a center for settlement of energy disputes at both a national and international level. I'm delighted and excited to announce this news to you at this forum. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the energy sector has undergone a radical structural change in Turkey that commenced in 2001. In this new period, in which a financially strong, stable, transparent, and competitive energy market is targeted, the energy market has been reshaped by the legal regulations. At this point, I would like to share information with you about the Energy Law Research Institute. Emergence of the most important needs identified in the energy sector is the contribution to the development of this specific area and to strengthen the free market structure, with studies to be carried out in the field of energy law, which is a fledgling field in Turkish law. Due to a lack of competent academicians and limited studies being carried out, we established the Energy Law Research Institute in 2007 to contribute to the development of energy law and the policies contained with the public and private sector. Since its establishment, the Institute has become an important platform where current and strategic issues are discussed, training given, conferences organized, along with symposiums and seminars, reports and publications are prepared for academicians and experts, as well as lawyers and professionals working in the energy sector. More than 5,000 people, including judges, lawyers, academics, and professionals in the sector, have attended various training programs carried out by the Institute. In 2017, we established an Energy Dispute Mediation Center within the Institute to contribute to the settlement of disputes arising in the energy sector by mediators who are competent in the energy market and energy law. The Mediation Center continues to work within the Institute to contribute to the settlement of disputes with the participation of expert mediators. Ladies and gentlemen, in this field of energy law, in addition to the settlement of disputes with classical state jurisdiction, it is also possible to settle legal claims using alternative dispute resolution methods. Recently, legislative studies and practices have been carried out in our country regarding alternative dispute resolution methods, particularly mediation. While it has been mandatory to apply for mediation before filing law, improve the mediation arbitration system are also encouraged so that the mediation and arbitration processes complement each other. The Energy Law Research Institute had a series of litigation symposiums during 2017, and in the light of these symposiums, we observed that the arbitration method in the energy sector is more appropriate in the interest of all parties, ultimately providing a faster and fairer trial for all concerned. As a result, we decided to establish the Energy Disputes Arbitration Center based on the 13 years of experience gained by the Energy Law Research Institute. I would like to express with huge satisfaction that Edac will play an important role in the institutional settlement of disputes regarding energy and infrastructure law in Europe, Central Asia, the Balkans, the Middle East, and African regions with its robust and experienced members of the national and international board and arbitrators. Edac, which is not affiliated with the state or any public institution, is an impartial and independent arbitration center, ensuring the arbitration process is carried out objectively and transparently. The Energy Disputes Arbitration Center is home to board members, consultants, and arbitrators from different nationalities and legal systems who are experts in the energy sector, energy law, and international law. At this point, I would like to once again thank the valued jurists and experts who are valued members of the board, along with our consultants and arbitrators acting on behalf of Edac. I believe that we will show ourselves to be effective and beneficial under the banner of Edac. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, arbitration is one of the mechanisms that stands out as an alternative dispute resolution method. Due to the high technical and global capital intensive nature of the energy sector, it is advantageous to resolve disputes regarding energy investments and trade through arbitration instead of using the classical state-run judgment process. Through arbitration, the arbitrators and the law to be applied are determined by all parties, and this method provides quicker results when compared to the state judgment option. The arbitration method is also preferred as the best dispute resolution method that can respond to the investors' search for trust and stability. In this context, we can list the benefits of the Energy Disputes Arbitration Center in resolving energy disputes as follows. First of all, in classical state jurisdiction, the judgment process is very slow, and this process often cannot meet the needs of the dynamic structure of the energy market. At this point, Edac will ensure that energy disputes are resolved faster than the classical state judgments. Subsequently, due to the sui generis structure of the energy sector, where there are large investments and therefore large risks, the participation of expert and impartial arbitrators who are dominant in the sector regarding settlement of disputes will facilitate in an efficient manner the settlement of disputes in this field. Moreover, the flexible nature of Edac arbitration rules for settlement of energy disputes will ensure that all parties affected have direct access to justice. Ladies and gentlemen, for the continued maintenance of Turkey's energy supply with a population in excess of 80 million, significant investments are made each year from both the public and private sector. This situation is similar for other countries in the region in terms of their population and economies. The factors that may arise in all this investment process can be resolved quickly, fairly, and impartially through arbitration will make Edac the solution center in these processes. On the other hand, Turkey aims to become an energy trading center, in other words, an energy hub in the medium and long term. When we form this target framework, Edac will have direct and indirect benefits in reaching this objective and beyond. For example, we are actively pursuing exploration of natural gas in the Black Sea region with some measurement of success. It is clear that the settlement of such disputes requiring speed and expertise can be achieved not through conventional courts, but through arbitration that can provide the fastest and most reliable results. Edac will thrive from Turkey's aim to be the trade center of the world by establishing a much broader and deeper market, and also contribute to these aims with its existence and its fast, independent, impartial, and expert dispute settlement service. Through Edac, which will occupy an important place by conducting sectoral arbitration in the world, Turkey will be both an energy trading center and a center for settlement of disputes within the energy sector. Under the roof of Edac and with transparent impartiality and independence, our highly competent arbitrators in the world arbitration arena and energy sector will be guarantors of Edac's clarity through the arbitration process. I would like to stress that the Energy Disputes Arbitration Center will play a key role in this area, in the way that we set out our vision to become a solution center for energy disputes at national and international levels. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to warmly thank Mr. Serhat Eskiyörük and executive board members of the Energy Law Research Institute for their efforts in establishing Edac. It's very much appreciated. I would also like to extend my gratitude for all participants here today for giving your time to attend the Edac launching assembly and sharing the happiness of this starting day with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for sharing your knowledge, wisdom, and vision for the future of Edac. I'd like to now pass the floor to Mr. Yusuf Gunay, a member of the National Board of Edac. Mr. Gunay, if you would. Mr. Gunay, are you with us?
Mr. President, may I speak Turkish? Is it possible?
Actually, there is a Turkish translation that people can get via Zoom. Is it possible to speak in English, Mr. Gunay? If you speak slowly, we will be patient.
Yes, slowly. Actually, I am very happy to
You can speak Turkish. Türkçe konuşabilirsiniz Yusuf Bey. Tercüme var. You can speak Turkish.
öyle mi? Başkan sanki mümkün değil dedi.
Evet, ben öyle başladım ama Türkçe devam edebilirsiniz. Translation var.
Translation yok diye anladım. O zaman tamam, devam edelim, fark etmez.
Lütfen Türkçe devam edelim.
Şimdi tabii öncelikle Sayın Başkan, saygıdeğer katılımcılar, böylesine bir kurumun enerji uyuşmazlıkları tahkim merkezinin Türkiye'de kurulmasını son derece önemli buluyorum. Tabii ki Türkiye dünyada özellikle enerji üreten ve enerji tüketen ülkelerin tam ortasında yer alan bir coğrafyada olduğu için enerji ticareti ve enerji merkezi olması yönünde Türkiye çok önemli adımlar attı ve bu süreçte de Sayın Başkan sizlerin de dediği gibi bunları destekleyici bir unsur olarak enerji uyuşmazlıkları tahkim merkezinde kurulması ve Türkiye'de, İstanbul'da faaliyete geçecek olması bu çabaları destekleyecek bir husus olmuştur. Tabii ki uluslararası alanda bu konuda aslında bir eksiklik de vardı. Uluslararası yatırımcıların güven duyacağı, istikrarlı ve belli sürede anında uyuşmazlıklara çözüm bulabileceği bir kurumun oluşması bu yatırımcılar için de son derece önemli. Ülkemiz için de önemli. Ülkeye yabancı sermaye gelmesinde, yatırımcıların Türkiye ilgi duymasında da önemli katkıları olacağını düşünüyorum. Benim bir başka toplantım nedeniyle biraz kısa kesmek istiyorum. Bütün arkadaşlarımı kutluyorum ve başarılar diliyorum. İnşallah hep birlikte çok doğru hizmetler veririz ve yatırımcılara da büyük kolaylıklar sağlayacak çözümler üretiriz diye düşünüyorum. Saygılarımı sunuyorum.
Teşekkür ederiz Yusuf Bey. Çok sağ olun katılımınız
Thank
için.
you very much, Mr. Gunay. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And now, if you would, Professor Peter Cameron, a member of the International Board of Edac. Mr. Cameron? Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I hope the sound is all nice and clear. Welcome from Scotland, and congratulations on this excellent initiative that Edac has been taking. I'm very honored to be associated with it, and I look forward to cooperating with it. Where I am in Edinburgh, we have the pleasure of hosting a very big conference next year, the Icc conference, which will be taking place in 2021. So I hope that I'll be able to meet some of you at that event and continue our conversation face to face. Energy disputes, as you all know, tend to be high value. There's also an extensive public interest in most, but not all, but most energy disputes. So I think that that's probably why they tend to be quite controversial. And I think that you've chosen an excellent location for a center that will investigate these issues. Turkey is the center of a number of different worlds, east and west and north and south. And I know that the Chinese seem to think that their country is the center of the earth under heaven, but I think you have a pretty good geographical claim to being actually right at the center of the current globe. So this is a very, very good location for a center for energy disputes. And I also tend to think that what we're going to see in the future is an increase in these disputes, because you're going to see a number of claimants coming forward who will be accessing what's called third-party funding. This is definitely on the increase, and I think it's going to lead to more and more claims. So I think you have chosen a very good moment to launch your center. I hope you are ready to be very busy because I think you will find that you become popular very quickly. Thank you very much to the organizers for the kind invitation. I'm delighted to be joining you and delighted to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those kind words. And now, Mr. Professor Mads Andenas from Norway, a member of the International Board of Edac. Mr. Andenas, are you with us?
I'm just unmuting myself here. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. And of course, COVID means that we cannot meet in person, but it probably means that more of us can meet like this. And of course, also for arbitration and indeed for mediation, the use of technology is now changing the way we operate, and in a way most of us never would have envisaged, and actually would have been quite against, I think, a year ago. And now we see how it works, and we see also the limitations, but the lessons to take the best of the new technological opportunities, or the opportunities which we probably should have known about, but really haven't known about, and most certainly haven't used, take the best from that, and also leave some of the worst behind us, is going to change the way in which we operate. I myself have been in a small way in court hearings in 2 jurisdictions on this very camera, in Norway before the Supreme Court, and also before an English court, and in non-energy, I'm afraid, but Icc hearings starting under the chairmanship of Sir Christopher Greenwood. And then when you have an experienced chair, it can actually work extremely well also via the computer screen, not only for seminars, but actually for arbitration hearings. It is a very good thing to come after Professor Peter Cameron, who of course pointed out the perspectives from the north. I'm of course even further north. I'm based in London and in Oslo, in Norway, and I'm now in Oslo, in Norway. And it's interesting also for energy. We are in the energy sector as Scotland is, and we see how energy arbitration, oil and gas arbitration for us, is changing legal practice. It's very important. It is, as Peter Cameron said, disputes of high value, of great public interest, and it has a lot of challenges. The contractual use of arbitration will, of course, only increase. Regulation is complex. Regulation is changing. Its impact is uncertain. Its impact also on the private contractual relationships create disputes which are best resolved by, or in many instances, only possibly they only possibly can be resolved through arbitration. And then, of course, although we are in a world where we can talk over the screen and through the camera, it is so that it's good to be located at the center of where things happen. And as our chair and the first speaker said, of course, some 80 million in Turkey and the energy needs of Turkey and the surrounding world. But as Peter Cameron added, you know, all these worlds meeting in your national jurisdiction, and all the countries who feel a link in the energy world to Turkey. And in addition to all these commercial traditions, there's no center better suited also in this energy sector. I think that it is obvious that the energy sector is the most interesting area for arbitration right now. I was director of the British Institute of International Comparative Law at the turn of the century, and we dealt with arbitration as kind of the most interesting area was international commercial arbitration, and then investment treaty arbitration was coming off, including, by the way, the first disputes under the Energy Charter Treaty. But since then, energy is now so much more important for a whole host of issues. And Peter Cameron mentioned the third-party funding. And of course, there's no doubt that that will increase the number of claims. Although in the energy sector, you could say that the value of the disputes in themselves would mean that you would have claims. The fact that you get third-party funding will change also this sector. Now, the launch at this assembly today allows the Centre to focus on the pressing problems of energy arbitration. And I must just add what a pleasure and great honor it is for me personally to be involved with Edac. Many thanks.
Thank you, Professor Andanas, for your very gracious words. Now I should like to pass the floor to Lohan Elias, if I may, International Board Member. Mr. Elias, are you with us? I think you are muted, Mr. Elias. We cannot hear you. Please.
Make that mistake.
Welcome. Mr. Elias?
I'm not mute now. Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies for that. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here and to be associated with this very laudable initiative. It's focused on the energy sector, and as matters stand at the moment, perhaps companies from Turkey and surrounding countries are not as active in Nigeria as they will be going forward. But as the previous speaker mentioned, arbitration in the energy sector is growing all the time. And Nigeria has been very active in that area for a very long time. Before now, the focus has been primarily on arbitration in London and in Western Europe, because that is where many of the clients have been based or have major offices. In the fullness of time, if we get more companies from Eastern Europe, I have no doubts that the center that we're talking about is going to become a more attractive option. We already have some measure of arbitration involved in Turkey. I'm involved in one, but it's a construction infrastructure dispute rather than an energy one. But I'm sure that with the right focus and the development in business areas over the next several years, that this initiative will become far more significant in practice. I wish it's every success. Whatever I can do to promote it, I'll be happy to. And I have no doubt that it will be a major part of all of our professional lives going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elias, for your kind words. Now I shall pass the floor to Ms. Sarah Aranjo, who is also a member of the International Board of Edac. Ms. Aranjo, if you'd be so kind, welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Stuart, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone, wherever you are. Greetings from the United Arab Emirates. I'm very delighted and honored once again to be part of this very exciting and timely initiative. As many of us know and share here interests in the energy sector, it's been, as we've all noticed, more timely in the current circumstances caused by the pandemic to be able to offer a service which is tailored and sophisticated to the specific type of disputes that arise out of energy-related transactions. And Mr. Chairman has highlighted very rightfully the ambitious vision and the gap that Edac purports to fill in. And I'm very confident that, and I echo the words by my other fellow members, board members earlier, that I am very confident that the center will be very busy in a very short period of time. As to the ambitions of the center from a geographic perspective, I also echo the words by my other fellow board members that the ambitions of the center, in my view, will also expand beyond the region, given the need more and more in arbitration for a tailor-made and sector-specific service offering. So I'm very much delighted to be on board and definitely look forward to collaborating with you all on this very interesting and timely venture. Thank you all once again.
Yeah, your support is very much appreciated. Very grateful for that. Moving along, Mr. Professor Minas Kachadorian, if you would be so kind to share some words with us. Mr. Kachadorian, are you with us? I think perhaps not. If we have time towards the end and Mr. Kachadorian joins us, we'll see if we can bring him in. I'll move along then in that case and offer the floor to Mr. Anthony Connerty, an arbitrator at Edac. Mr. Connerty. Mr. Connerty, not with us?
He's there. He's muted.
He's ill today. Well, we wish him well and better a speedy recovery.
Tony.
You are there. Mr. Connerty, please unmute yourself. You are muted. There you go.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, can I say on behalf of the IDR group that I'm delighted that the group has been invited to join Edac. For me personally, as a barrister practicing in London and as a member of the London-based IDR group, I'm pleased to have been invited to join Edac. It seems to me that the centre will provide arbitration services for energy-related matters. And I think it's been mentioned already by a number of the speakers that Turkey is a bridge. It's a bridge jurisdiction and is therefore able to act as a neutral venue for international disputes. And Edac, I think, will have an important role to play in this significant international field. And I'm looking ahead a little to later on in this meeting. I'm pleased to have been invited to speak here today later on. I join everybody else, all of us here, in wishing the energy disputes arbitration good luck, and for the reasons which have been given adequately by others. This centre is going to be, I think, enormously successful. So congratulations to the centre and to Mr. Boscher, and I look forward to very exciting things happening in the future. Thank you.
On behalf of the chairman, thank you very much, because you're very kind. Mrs. Dorothy Udemi.
Thank you. I want to thank the organizers of this initiation for inviting me to be part of this great development. I congratulate the Edac for setting up this specialist arbitration center. As we all know, energy disputes in power, oil and gas are very complex disputes requiring specialist expertise. I have no doubt that this center will grow very fast. In Nigeria, we have a lot of energy disputes, and we habitually, as Mr. Elias has mentioned, go to the London Court of Arbitration, we go to Icc, and we do it in an ad hoc manner. I personally have been involved in the resolution of energy disputes, oil and gas, prior to COVID-19 and during the COVID-19. So I have absolutely no doubt that this is a great initiative. We will all lend our support as specialists in the area. And as we have heard also from other speakers, Turkey has a central position in the resolution of energy disputes. And what makes me happy even more is that Turkey is a signatory to the New York Convention. And so when we gather experts to resolve these disputes, we are looking at the enforceability of these arbitral awards. And by doing so, we will ensure that this arbitration center becomes internationally comparable to the established institutions for resolution of disputes, particularly in the energy field like ICC, LCIA. So congratulations, I lend my support to this initiative, and we'll do all we can to make sure that this center hits the ground running. Thank you for inviting me once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you so much. And now Mr. Sornaraya is here. Mr. Sornaraya. Yeah, I would like to give the floor to you.
Sorry, I just unmuted. Thank you so very much for inviting me to this very great occasion. I'm sure that the venture that you have established now is going to be a very successful one. And it is, as others have said, located at a very advantageous position in a country that is known for neutrality. And to that extent, I'm sure that this area of arbitration, with which all international investment arbitration particularly began, because we must know that it was the Middle Eastern arbitrations that were the genesis of international investment arbitration from the 1950s onwards. So to that extent, then, there has been an evolution in arbitration. And of course, much of the law has been, as I have said in my writings, generated by arbitrators of the Western world. So the movement of arbitration to a neutral country like Turkey, to a geographic area in which much of the oil is situated, is to be very welcome, in the sense that there would be hopefully a generation of a new type of law that would emerge, and also at a center that would prove to be more neutral at a time when other centers of arbitration have attracted a lot of academic and other criticisms. So this is a worthwhile venture. I'm very happy to be able to be on the international board of this center, and I wish all the very best for the establishment of this center. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sornaraya. And Mr. Minas, Professor Minas is here. Okay, I saw before. Okay, now Mr. Hilal Osman is here. And yes. Mr. Osman.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you. I apologize for the delay. It's the first time I'm happy to discuss about arbitration in the field of energy. I have just to say that it's very important. It's opportunity for us to be together from different countries, from European countries, African countries, and to discuss about this field, the field of energy. And we know that it's a very important field in the investment law. So we have to improve studies and practice on how to resolve disputes in this field by the all alternative dispute resolution, by mediation, by arbitration. So the projects supported by Istanbul and by all of us is very important. I know that the chart of energy is a very important instrument, but all the disputes in the field of energy are not exclusively resolved by this chart. So we have to develop our capacity, ability to improve, I insist, researches and reflections on this field. How can you proceed? Can we proceed in the context of COVID? How to make a coordination between practitioners, practice and theories. We know that we have no border between practice and academic approaches in the field of energy, and particularly in the field of the disputes, the settlement of dispute in this field. How can we help not only Turkey, the country, but all the countries which are interested by the field of to develop investment in the field of energy, not only oil energy, but all the energy, the new energy, how can we do, and what can we propose in this field all together. I think that's our center is an opportunity to make a link between academic researches and practice in arbitration and mediation to improve the development of research, the development of the practice in arbitration and mediation and all alternative dispute resolution, and also to help all the states to be attractive and to promote investment in this field. The experience we are a new, very young organization, but with many members who have a great experience. So we can be optimists, and we have just to have like a forcible contract between us to make all together our best efforts to help the center and to use our due diligence for the organization of many seminars, many academics meeting in the field of energy, and particularly in the field of energy and arbitration and mediation. So I'm very happy to be with you, and I have just to say to all of you that it's a very important, I know that's to use this center as a place in which we can prove to all the states that in the practice and the academic approach, we are a very strong link between all the states. We have just decided to take, for example, and as example of this link, the field of energy, and we can, I think, it's idealist to promote the peace by business, by peaceful, by international agreement, international relations, international dispute resolution in the field of energy. I hope that our center will prove that it's possible in bad context, international context between and tensions between states. So I have just to tell you, thank you very much, and it's great honor to be with you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Osman, thank you so much for your very kind words. Please forgive me, I had a little bit technical problems, but I hope that they're fixed. It may be that you can't see me, but I hope you can all hear me. I should like now to bring in Mr. Minas Kachadorian. Mr. Kachadorian, if you would be so kind as to unmute yourself so that we can hear you. Mr. Kachadorian, you are muted. If you would be kind enough to unmute yourself. Are you with us, Mr. Kachadorian? Okay, I'm going to move on. If we get some time at the end, we'll try and bring Mr. Kachadorian back in. Then if I may open the floor to Mr. Yüksel Yalova, a national board member of Edac. Mr. Yalova, are you with us? Mr. Yalova, are you with us? I think not. Same applies.
Mr. Yalova is here.
Mr. Yalova, can you hear us? Mr. Yalova, please, Yüksel Yalova, I see you. We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you, Mr. Yalova. We cannot hear you.
Maybe there is a technical problem.
Yeah, I think nobody is hearing Mr. Yalova. Mr. Yalova, I'm going to bring the next person in and I will come back to you directly, okay? After Mr. Yalova, Mr. Ibrahim Ermenek, a national board member of Edac. Mr. Ermenek, are you with us?
Evet, siz duyuyorum. Siz duyuyor musunuz beni?
Welcome.
Sesimi duyuyor, sesimi duyuyor musunuz? Sesimi duyuyor musunuz, Mr. Stuart?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me,
Evet.
Mr. Stuart?
Evet, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Öncelikli olarak bütün katılımcılarımıza hem ulusal hem uluslararası divan üyelerimize katkıları için teşekkür ediyoruz. Bütün katılımcılarımız ifade ettiler. Son dönemlerdeki bizim bile bildiğimiz kadarıyla sektörel bazlı olarak faaliyete geçen ilk tahkim merkezi hem bulunduğu konum itibariyle hem güncel sorunlar dikkate alındığında son derece önemli bir işlevi yerine getireceğini düşünüyoruz. Bu nedenle emeğe geçen başta Sayın Başkan Bozca olmak üzere herkese sonsuz teşekkür ediyorum. İyi ki varsınız. Teşekkür ediyorum. Selamlar, saygılar.
Thank you very, very much. Mr. Kachadorian, I beg your pardon, Mr. Yalova, are you in a position to try your speech now? Mr. Yalova?
Okay. Yes, I think
yes,
okay now.
Please, we are waiting for you.
Okay.
Thank you very
Değerli
much.
hanımefendiler ve beyefendiler, öncelikle böyle bir açılış programında ve Edac çatısı altında sizlerle bir araya gelmekten duyduğum memnuniyeti ifade etmek istiyorum ve hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum. Ülkemizde milletler arası tahkimin anayasa metnine girmesi sürecinde etkin rol almış eski bir parlamenter ve bakan olarak Edac'ın ulusal ve uluslararası düzlemde enerji uyuşmazlıklarının çözümünde önemli bir rol oynayacağına, hatta bunun ötesinde ülkemizin enerji politikalarını önemli düzeyde destekleyeceğine ve ülkemizin enerji merkezi olma iddiasını güçlendireceğine inanıyorum. Bu vesileyle Edac'ın kuruluş fikrinin ortaya atılmasından günümüze bu süreçte emeği geçen ve bizleri burada bir araya getiren herkese en derin teşekkürlerimi sunuyorum. Bilindiği üzere tahkim yöntemi, alternatif çözüm yöntemi olarak devlet yargısı alternatifi olarak öne çıkan kurumlardan biridir. Türkiye'de enerji sektörünün artan önemi de göz önünde bulundurulduğunda böyle uluslararası düzlemde bir tahkim merkezinin kurulması da fevkalade önemlidir. Yeni ve alternatif enerji türlerinin ortaya çıkması, sözleşme pratiklerinin değişmesi, enerji sektöründeki mevzuatta sık sık değişikliklerin yapılması, bu alandaki uyuşmazlıkların hız ve uzmanlık gerektirmesi gibi etkenler, uygulanacak hukuk ve uyuşmazlığın çözümünde rol alacak hakemlerin taraflarca seçilebildiği tahkim yöntemini en iyi uyuşmazlık çözüm yöntemlerinden biri haline getirmiştir. Edac'ın sektöründe bir ilk olarak farklı milletlerden ve farklı hukuk sistemlerinden enerji sektöründe deneyimli ulusal ve uluslararası divan üyeleri ve hakemleriyle danışmanları bünyesinde toplamış olması, enerji uyuşmazlıklarının çözümünde uzman yaklaşımının yansıtılmasını sağlayacaktır. Önümüzde yeni açılan bu dönemde hep birlikte çalışarak bu öngörülerimizin gerçekleştiğini görme imkanımız olacak. Bu duygu ve düşüncelerle teşekkür ediyor ve Edac'a başarılar diliyorum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yalova. And now to Mr. Professor Murat Atala, also a national board member of Edac. Mr. Atala, are you with us? Mr. Atala, are you with us? Okay, we have a little bit of time at the end, so I have time to bring people back in who have missed their slot. Mr. Alper Çağrı Yılmaz, a national board member of Edac. Are you with us, Mr. Yılmaz? Alper Çağrı Yılmaz? Okay, same applies. Moving on. I would like to bring in now Mr. Peter Foreman, if you would be so kind, who's an arbitrator for Edac. Mr. Foreman.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I don't want to say very much about this, but I do think that there is a great advantage in Edac concentrating on energy law. There are a number of excellent centres for arbitration, some of which have been mentioned by other people, ICC, LCIA, Stockholm Chamber, many others. But to concentrate solely on energy will, I believe, give Edac something of an advantage. It is a very specialist field. A number of the people here today probably do little else but energy work. And to have somewhere where the expertise is concentrated on that particular industry will, in my opinion, be a great advantage. My main job actually is working as a consultant, advising people on whether they should use arbitration, among other things, and if so, where they should go. And it will be a great advantage to be able to say to somebody, we have a centre you might like to think about where the people actually understand energy. And I wish Edac all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly for those very generous words. Mr. Jeffrey Hartwell, an arbitrator, if you'd be kind enough to share your thoughts. Mr. Hartwell.
Thank you, sir. I was interested in this field myself because in my lifetime I was almost entirely involved with energy from a technical point of view. I was apprenticed originally in oil tankers 60 odd years ago, but I've been involved with the old electricity generating board in London and also in the nuclear industry, and that, so that it struck me we were talking about a field which could be extremely interesting, and some of the issues of facts are going to come up from time to time, and I'm just interested to see how it works out. But you're absolutely right. Turkey is at the traditional crossroads of Asia and Europe, and indeed partly all my American friends. I think that we're talking about the center of the world. But thank you.
Thank you very kindly for your very generous thoughts. Now, I'm going to give one final call for either Mr. Kachadorian, Mr. Atala, or Mr. Alper Çağrı Yilmaz. If you are with us and you would like to speak, please instruct me now. Okay, then what I'd like to do is I'd like to open the floor to anybody who would like to share their thoughts, has some valid comments for us. You'd be very welcome. Please just state your name as you begin with your speech, so that everybody knows who we're talking to. So the floor is open for anybody wishing to pass any comments at all. Do we have any takers?
Yes. Can I have a word? Say a couple of words.
Tell us your name.
Mustafa Erkan.
Very welcome. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. You know, today is a very special day. You know, I would like to express my pleasure that you all are here today. Today we are witnessing the establishment of Edac. This is very good development, because I wanted to see these days when I started working energy years ago. In my PhD thesis, I mainly studied the resolution of the energy conflicts. I am very happy to have the opportunity to practice this here in my country. In addition, this center will also enhance the effectiveness in the energy field. This is pleasing for my country. I hope Edac will achieve its intent success in a very short time. Best regards. Thank you very much.
I would like to say something. My name is Roberto Virozzi. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I just wanted to thank Mr. Bosca and Edac for this great opportunity, because I truly believe in the goals and scope of this. When we started talking, Mr. Bosca and Ankara, 2 years ago, the thing that really highlighted the conversation and was inspiring to me was the mission of the center. Like, besides the fact that everybody here has a wide variety of skills that come from all over the world, and this is an addition to the table, I think that the main point that probably would make a successful center out of this center is a mission that is to research attitudes and trends in this dispute resolution world. And I hope that it's going even to bring some light and to facilitate the debate and promote the best practice in this such a very complex and articulate, I would say, field. So I wish you all of us the best of luck, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys. And again, thank you. I'm very pleased and honored to be part of this. Thank you, Mr. Bosch, and thank you, Edac, as well. Thank you.
Mr. Roberto, thank you so much for your kind words. May I just ask everybody who is attending the meeting that if you are speaking whilst another speaker is talking, it's very difficult to hear. So if you want to have a conversation, please mute yourself so that we can clearly hear the speakers. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lucas Mistelis is here.
From Mr. Professor Minas Kachadorian, who has some technical problems, but would like to share his thoughts with you. So he has sent me a small text that I'm going to read to all of you from Professor Minas Kachadorian, who's a member of the International Board of Edac. So I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Kachadorian. Dear professors, colleagues and friends, I'm very glad to join you in this exceptional gathering and to be part of the International Board. I look forward to an excellent debate. I stress on the common task of all the members of Edac Board, international members, to promote the goal of the Centre and to adapt continuously to the arbitration rules to meet the specifics of energy disputes. I send you my warm regards from Qatar, and I regret not to be able, for some technical reasons, to unmute my microphone. Mr. Kachadorian, on behalf of all of the attendees, we're very grateful for you spending the time to share your thoughts with us. It's very, very gracious of you. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on.
Mr. Temple, yes. Just a moment. Mr. Lucas Mistelis is here. Maybe he would like to give speech.
Yeah, please, if you would like to bring him in, that will be fine. Mr. Mistelis, I beg your pardon. Please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So,
good afternoon and welcome.
Apologies for my late joining the call, but it's a teaching day for me, so I had to make sure that finish my teaching, take off my tie, and
we're very grateful for you to give us your time, please.
And join a professional call with colleagues with like-minded and pursue very similar objectives. So I'm delighted to be part of this initiative.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Does anybody else wish to share their thoughts or have any comments? You are very welcome. I think that's now we're going to please. Hello.
Odandaki bilgisayar açsana.
I don't know who is speaking.
Mr. Arsin Demir is speaking.
Mr. Demir. Mr. Demir, would you like to speak? Mr. Demir, would you like to share some words with us? Oh, Mr. Demir, my last. I think I'm going to say no to Mr. Demir at this stage, but he's very welcome to join us at his leisure. Anybody else? Anybody else would like to come in?
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, may I? Few words?
You certainly may, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for getting floor to me. My name is Gökhan Yardım. As we, today is very important day for the Turkey's energy field, because after 2001, Turkey started the liberalization of the energy markets. After the natural gas market law, electricity market law, petroleum market law, and LPG market law. So Turkey started the liberalization of the markets. So of course, the companies came and started to trade, and the construction companies came to invest in Turkey. So the dispute started to arise. So all the dispute resolution taken on the other places. So thanks to Mr. Süleyman Boşça, he noticed that there is a necessity for the establishment of the dispute resolution center. So I'm very glad to be part of this center. I'm sure that after now on in Turkey, because Turkey is the center of the West, East, North, and South, so can be a good center, and I'm very delighted to be a part of this center. And thanks to Mr. Süleyman Boşça for the establishment and take initiatives for the establishment of this center. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Again, the floor is open before we move on to the second session. Does
Mr.
anybody?
Kapil?
Yes.
This is Rıdvan Aktürk speaking.
Very
I would like to congratulate the initiative. This is, I believe, very important, not only for Turkey, but for the region. In my professional life, I see arbitration as the last resort thing, but an indispensable medium or the process which gives the comfort to the parties. So I hope this Edac is going to serve the community in the energy business, of course, well, so that everybody is going to be happy. But it's important to promote the presence and the capabilities and the capacities of the center properly, so that we get enough and sufficient attention from the business community. Again, of course, many things have been said by all the members. So I join I feel and I share the feelings of the colleagues. Hope this is going to be a success, and I wish good luck to everyone, and hope to work together. Thank you.
Mr. Aktürk, thank you so much. The floor remains open for any other comments. Nobody?
May I speak a bit?
You certainly may. You're very welcome. Please announce yourself. Let us know who you are.
Yeah, Mehmet Yılmazer speaking, who is the arbitrator as well, and has been dealing with energy field for so many years. So in terms of my experience, that we were looking for a center like Edac. That's why, first of all, I am very happy to be involved in it. And also, I would like to thank you for the idea and the establishment of this center to Süleyman Boşça and the team of him. By the time we're gonna see during the awareness of Turkey in energy sector, even especially in natural gas sector, we wish to be a hub in the world, so energy hub. So by the time increasing the demand of increasing the demand of natural gas and such energy products, we're gonna see many conflicts between the companies. Of course, we do not wish to see so much, but by the time we're gonna see, I think this is the reality that we cannot avoid from it. So by the time I know this initiative will become bigger and bigger, and huge response we will get, I am expecting. So thanks for everyone letting us to a new era in Turkey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very kind words, Mr. Yılmaz. The floor remains open. Then I will take this opportunity to, on behalf of the chairman, thank all of you who shared your thoughts and comments with us, and for your very clear support for this new and exciting adventure that is coming for us. Now we'll proceed to the second session of the launching assembly, In this session, a webinar will take place on the resolution of energy disputes in the age of COVID-19. As everybody knows, the whole world is going through an unprecedented period due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In this session, the resolution of energy disputes during this period will be evaluated by the Edac arbitrators. This webinar will be moderated by Dr. Serhat Eskiyorak. Dr. Eskiyorak, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stuart. It's honor and pleasure for me to moderate this session. And it's honor for me to see this such eminent professor and practitioners in this organization. I hope a huge success altogether. As it was mentioned, it's our center and it's specific for energy, and I wish all success with my heart. So in our program, we will 4 speakers, Mr. Antonio Conerti, Mr. Peter Furman, Miss Dorothy Udeme Ufot, and Mr. Cem Çağatay Orak. First speaker, I will start with Mr. Furman. I would like to make a short introduction of Mr. Furman. He is an English qualified lawyer based in Scotland who has spent much of his career in the offshore oil and gas engineering and construction sector as a legal director and later as executive vice president for major contracts. He is currently a consultant working mainly in the offshore energy sectors, providing advice and support on contract negotiations and avoidance of disputes and the resolution where such efforts are unsuccessful. Peter is a member of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. He's a mediator, co-author of the well-known book of Scottish Arbitration Handbook. He was formerly the external examiner in arbitration law and also other subjects at University of Aberdeen. So floor is yours, Peter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm going to talk about how COVID is producing disputes, and my colleagues are going to talk about how it may be that COVID is going to alter the way in which we resolve them. Now, as Serhat has explained, my background is in the world of engineering and construction for offshore energy projects, originally oil and gas, but increasingly offshore wind projects as well. And I currently act as a consultant for companies who are in those industries and have started to see disputes that were rising because of COVID-19. Now, in the main, the impact on the type of projects with which I've been involved being focused on delays and costs associated with lockdowns and other restrictions, but also indirectly from the reduced actual or anticipated demand as a result of the reduced economic activity on a global basis. Now, the 2 words which keep cropping up are force majeure, English law's famous favourite French phrase. A misunderstanding as to what may or may not be meant by this in different circumstances. And I believe that these may well give rise to quite a lot of disputes as we move forward. Now, I'll be looking at some of these issues that may arise, but it's not intended to be a comprehensive review. And I will admit that my background as an English qualified lawyer may become apparent once or twice as we move forward, and I apologise for that. So, in many civil law countries, there are definitions of what force majeure is, either in the codes or in decisions of the courts. My limited research into Turkish law suggests that you don't have a definition in the Code of Obligations, but you do have decisions of the appeals courts concerning what force majeure means. Unfortunately, in English law, we don't do anything as straightforward as that, and so it tends to be a definition that appears in the contract rather than in any code. So the problem then comes that many of the clauses do not really address the problems that have come through COVID-19. It's worth noting that definitions tend to say that the performance of the work has to be rendered impossible and not merely more difficult and more expensive. And in many cases, what COVID-19 has done is the latter. It has made it more difficult and more expensive to do your work. So many clauses, including some in the standard form documents, provide an exclusive list. That is, force majeure events can only be from the list mentioned. The difficulty is most of these exclusive lists including, to be honest, at least one that I helped to draft, so I'm slightly embarrassed, do not include pandemics and epidemics. To pause for a moment, if we're drafting in the future, I'd put both pandemics and epidemics in, as a regional epidemic can be just as difficult as a global pandemic. So disputes may well arise on the basis that an exclusive list has been used, and since it doesn't include pandemics and epidemics, they're simply not there. Again, just to pause, quite a few contracts still include pressure waves by supersonic aircraft as a grounds for force majeure. And I have for at least 20 years been inviting people to tell me if they know anybody who knows anybody who knows anybody who has ever used that clause. And if they have, I'll be happy to make a donation to a charity of your choice. To my knowledge, it's never been used. So we have that in, but we don't have pandemics and epidemics. So there's an issue there. But does the governing law override this? If the local law, or the governing law of the contract, specifies what force majeure should be, then does that override what the parties have agreed? Or can the parties extend it by what they've said or restrict it? That will obviously depend on country to country, but it is a potential issue. In my experience to date, parties have tended to look at the contract for what they mean by force majeure and have taken a pragmatic approach from there. And that may well continue, but as the disputes get bigger and the numbers get bigger, people are going to start to look at what the law says as well. Also, for force majeure, one of the issues tends to be that the problem was not foreseeable or reasonably foreseeable at the date of the contract. So when did COVID-19 become a foreseeable matter? Well, the first World Health Organization statement was on the 31st of December 2019 about viral pneumonia in Wuhan. This was changed to a novel coronavirus on the 9th of January. The first case outside China was in Thailand on the 13th of January. By the 24th of January, there were cases in France, but the Thai and French and some other cases all linked to people who traveled from Wuhan. So it could be fairly well restricted at that stage. The name COVID-19 was given to it on the 11th of February, and a pandemic was declared on the 11th of March. Now, there may therefore be considerable arguments as to what should have happened for contracts entered into before the 11th of March, should people have been anticipating a problem. And also, even after that date, could people have foreseen the extent and nature of the restrictions that we've all had to work under? There may be a distinction here between countries who had had experience of SARS, MERS, H1N1, even Ebola, and were used to the problems of epidemics and pandemics, rather than other countries, including many in Europe and North America and South America, who thought it was just another influenza and could probably be ignored. So that, I think, is another area where there may be problems for contracts entered into in early 2020. But if there are no provisions in the contract or the general law that are wide enough to cover COVID, what about a change in law clause? There may be a change in law provision in the force majeure clause or a separate clause about increased costs. Now, this will be sufficient to cover government-imposed lockdowns and quarantines, but there's a problem. In many countries, including my own, some matters have been covered not by a change of law, but by guidelines with strong admonitions that people had to comply. Even statements that suggest that the criminal law is somehow involved when it wasn't. So if it is purely a government guideline, does this constitute a change in law in terms of the clause? Now, there will be a distinction if the government guidelines are that it will be unsafe to work in certain circumstances, because the general health and safety law may then compel you to withdraw people from the site. The problem is that that doesn't involve a change in health and safety law. It's the same law as it was before. I have been involved in a dispute concerning well, it wasn't a dispute, a problem concerning a bulk fuel installation on an airfield where the guidelines issued by the government were such that the site could not stay open, but the law didn't require it to close. Both parties in that case took a very pragmatic view and decided it simply wasn't safe, and they closed the site down. And many people have taken a similar view, whatever the strict wording of the contract may have been. On another case, a client had a crew on an offshore platform, actually off Mexico, and COVID-19 was discovered on board, and they took the view, which I'm sure was correct, to evacuate all their crew and get them away. I would have done the same in the days when I was a manager. But again, on the strict wording of the contract, that probably wasn't correct. The matter has been resolved without a formal dispute, and long may that continue. The force majeure is generally about delay and relieves parties from their obligations, but it doesn't pay the overheads and the standby costs of the contractors concerned. Now, in the UK and many other countries, governments have supported contractors who have to shut down by furlough schemes or other grant methods, but that is never covering 100% of the problem. So what sort of claims may be arising in relation to cost? Well, quarantine. One of my clients was sending people to Malaysia, and they were required to quarantine for 14 days on arrival and quarantine for 14 days on the way back. Now, this wasn't force majeure because the work was not rendered impossible. Just meant you had to send people out there 2 weeks earlier and got them back 2 weeks later. But who pays the cost of the quarantine, the wages, the accommodation? Again, parties have tended to be quite sensible in discussing this, but the longer this goes on and the more the figures are involved, the more likely there are to be disputes, although in these at the lower end of the scale and probably not troubling a major arbitration centre. But what the position where staff are prohibited from travelling to a country is quite clear. My own company has a contract with the Canadian federal government at the moment. It's just about to come to an end. For the last few months, I could not have travelled to Canada because I would not have been allowed in. Clear that I cannot proceed. What about if staff are just reluctant to travel to a place or reluctant to travel at all? During H1N1 in Southeast Asia a few years ago, I was doing some work in Malaysia and I travelled to the country and was not concerned. That's not because I'm particularly brave or I think foolish, but because you could only catch the disease by handling chickens and ducks or the corpses of recently dead chickens and ducks. And I formed the view that a 5-star hotel in Kuala Lumpur would probably not require me to handle too many recently dead chickens. But other people may take a different view. And lastly, even if everything else works, could you actually get people to foreign locations if they needed to physically go? During the height of the pandemic lockdown, my local regional airport at Edinburgh, which is a fairly busy hub, on some days had 2 flights, and when it was really busy, got up to 3. There was very difficult to move around. Now, one factor, though, has been, and my colleagues will be talking about this, so I won't deal with that, is how we deal with remote hearings and arbitration, and how we deal with things like today, where we're using Zoom. I've been involved in many more negotiation meetings with my clients recently, because it's very cheap to get me in a 1-hour Zoom call rather than flying me to Singapore. So I think people will change how they're dealing with it. This may not give rise to actual claims. But then more generally in the industry, what happens if there's been a collapse in demand? To give an example, Uzbekistan, which exports a lot of natural gas, has seen demand from China drop between 70 and 80%, and demand from Russia disappear completely. So there are major areas where projects will be delayed or not be going ahead because of that. But on that Uzbekistan example, there's an upside. Uzbekistan is building gas to liquids plants in order to use their gas to produce liquid fuel. So there may be one door closing and another door opening. But what happens if the project where the door is closing, does it enable a party to terminate? Will there be grounds for renegotiation? Will there be claims? It will depend on the strict law. It'll depend on the wording of the contract and the law, the governing law concerned. But renegotiation is likely to happen anyway. And it may either be on the basis of what is sometimes described as, do you actually want to work in this town again? And basically a threat for people to renegotiate. Or it may alternatively be that people want to maintain a long-term business relationship, and hopefully that will be the main area. But what about if none of this works and the project just can't go ahead? Can the parties just walk away? Well, English law has a concept called frustration, but that doesn't necessarily apply in other countries, where you can just walk away from the contract. So there may be disputes over that, or whether people are wrongfully terminating the contract. So other speakers are going to address specific issues in arbitration, but if I can conclude, I am seeing clients much more interested in arbitration as a concept than they might have been before COVID-19. In addition to issues such as the confidentiality and comparative ease of international enforcement that somebody had mentioned earlier, and that had always existed, there's also increased interest in the ability to appoint specialist arbitrators who may have technical or other business knowledge relating to the energy industry. And here I think Edac does have an advantage if it's going to focus on energy, as I said earlier. Also, many court systems are creaking under the pressure. The more pessimistic reports in my country at one stage talked about a 10-year backlog on cases. That has turned out to be a gross overestimate, but there clearly will be a backlog. And in countries where there were already delays, those delays are going to get substantially worse. The greater willingness of arbitrators to arrange virtual hearings and proceed on paper-only basis, where possible, may make arbitration very much more attractive than those legal systems that try and remain with open court hearings. So in conclusion, a rising tide of disputes and an increased necessity to find alternatives for overloaded courts. What could be a better time to be launching Edac than this time of adversity? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this great presentation. Yeah, it's very great to listen to you. I have questions, but I would like to leave the questions at the end of the session, with your kind permission. So I would like to now pass to Ms. Dorothy Udema-Ofot. I would like to make a little introduction about her. Ms. Ufot is the founding manager of Dorothy Ufot & Co. She is the fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and Chartered Arbitrator. She is immediate past member of Icc Court of Arbitration in Paris, and also global vice president of Icc Commission on Arbitration and ADR. Currently, he's the member of the Council of Icc Institute of World Business Law. She is very active in Icc Nigeria Committee. She is also member of IBA, Chartered Institute, and London Oil and Gas Arbitration Club. She has lots of experience in panel of arbitrators at AAA, ICC, Korean, Hong Kong, and Dubai, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur arbitration centers. So she is also a senior advocate in Nigeria, and she's a recommended leading expert. So floor is yours, Dorothy. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you for inviting me, and I also congratulate the this initiative of Edac. My topic is on the impact of COVID-19 on the energy industry and the resolution of the attendant disputes. The worldwide spread of COVID-19 has led to immediate significant impact on the energy sector. This has translated into significant reduction in the demand for energy as industries and commercial spaces are closed, commuting and travel have been drastically reduced, with almost the entire world on lockdown, forcing energy companies to adapt to what we would now call the new normal. Energy companies are currently tackling the immediate operational challenges of COVID-19, including difficulties with supply chain. there will inevitably be an increase in complex disputes in areas such as the joint operating agreement, the production sharing contracts, marginal fields, gas sales and purchase agreements, gas sales agreements, risk service agreements, concession agreements, and power purchase agreements. Several of these disputes will arise. What are the nature of the disputes that will arise? Peter has already enumerated disputes that will arise, such as force majeure, and others are contracts as a result of COVID-19. Many energy contracts have been frustrated. There are change in law clauses. Contracts have been terminated. We have health and safety obligation issues. We have insolvency and liquidity issues because most of the energy companies are joint ventures. We have investor-state disputes. We have energy storage disputes. We have natural gas price review disputes. Now, with COVID-19, the question is, how will these disputes be resolved under COVID-19 situation? Would these disputes be suspended? Those that have already been commenced before COVID-19, those that are yet to be commenced, are these parties who have issues and disputes in respect of the effect of COVID-19 on existing contracts? Will these disputes be suspended? We have seen how the international arbitration community has responded to the COVID-19 issues. There's no doubt that arbitration remains the most viable means of resolving international energy disputes. There are lots of them. Why is arbitration so attractive? Arbitration is attractive because of the finality of the decision, the award of the arbitrators. And because most investing parties would not like to submit themselves to the jurisdiction of the host countries where they have their investments, this makes international arbitration even more attractive. In the current climate caused by the COVID-19 emergency, users of international arbitration have increasingly turned to video conferencing in the face of global travel restrictions when parties and witnesses are unavailable for in-person hearing. It is important to emphasize that in an economic downturn, disputes which arise can be resolved by virtual hearings other than the traditional in-person hearings. This has made technology to become very sophisticated in the era of COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen the response of most institutions to the problems caused by COVID-19. We have all resorted to virtual hearings. I have had, since COVID-19, I have personally had, 2 weeks ago, I concluded a virtual hearing involving a gas dispute under the LCIA rules. I have also had recently a virtual hearing involving a dispute between an investor and a host state under the Icc Rules. So everyone is embracing the use of virtual hearings. But we know that while this is possible, these are not without its challenges. Now, what have the institutions done to ensure that these virtual hearings are optimal and the resultant awards become enforceable under the New York Convention, which I mentioned earlier, Turkey is a signatory of, and which will serve as a guide to even Edac, because setting up this arbitration center, I said earlier that we have to hit the ground running. And with travel restrictions, I believe that even the Edac will have to resort to virtual hearings in the resolution of disputes that are submitted to the center. The biggest challenge with virtual hearing is the adequacy of the technology. Many times, many parties do not have the requisite power or equipment to carry out these virtual hearings. And so what the institutions do is to carry out a lot of testing, to test the equipment of the parties long before the hearing, to test the equipment of the arbitrators, test the equipment of the center, go through everything weeks and weeks, test and retest before, to ensure that everybody is fully ready for these hearings. And once these have been put in place, we've seen that virtual hearing really works and makes the business to go on. While we are adopting virtual hearings, we have to bear in mind the enforceability of the award. And that takes us to how the center, the institution, and the parties take steps to ensure that the resulting award from virtual hearing meets the standard prescribed by the New York Convention. Article 5.1b of the New York Convention provides for the setting aside of an award if a party against whom the award is invoked was otherwise unable to present its case. This is where virtual hearing has its most challenges. And when we embark on virtual hearing, we must have in mind that we would need to enforce the award. One question that often comes up is, where in the course of an arbitration, we've seen today that Dr. Miners has been unable to join us due to some technical problems he's had with his equipment. Now the question is, if this had been an arbitral proceedings where one party has been cut off and unable to present its case because of the fault of its equipment, the question that will arise at the enforcement stage would be whether that party that was unable to present his case has been treated equally. And the answer will be no. So this presupposes, as I've said, that bearing in mind the hallmark of enforceability, Edac, for instance, must fully equip its center to be internationally comparable to other centers, to be able to embark on these virtual hearings, because we're not going to stop. The world must go on despite COVID-19. There are many institutional assistance that have been put in place. Most of these institutions have created or formulated institutional guidelines for virtual hearing, and I would urge Edac to also be looking in this direction so that we can run as quickly as we have said. So what is going to happen post-COVID-19? Post-COVID-19, we are going to see more and more virtual hearings. We are going to see documents-only arbitration because of travel restrictions. people would need to be confident that they are safe with the health and safety issues before they can travel to have an in-person arbitration proceedings. So most often we would see going forward hybrid situations where in particular cases we would do procedural hearings virtually, and if possible, we would then have the final hearing physically. So we're going to be seeing a hybrid of arbitration proceedings, a combination of virtual hearing and in-person hearing going forward as a result of COVID-19. In conclusion, I would conclude by saying that while COVID-19 poses many challenges in the energy industry, particularly in respect of the attendant energy disputes that have arisen and would still continue to arise, international arbitration remains the preferred mechanism for resolving these energy disputes. It is to this end that the setting up of Edac is a timely and most welcome development. Edac will do well to fully equip the center with the required technology that will make the efficient resolution of these energy disputes and the enforceability of the resulting awards possible. I thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation. Congratulations once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ford, for this great speech, and also thank you for your nice words about Edac. You talk about the hybrid proceedings. It seems very likely, and I think we might see also more cooperation between the institutions. So thank you very much again. So now I would like to proceed to Mr. Anthony Konarty. I would like to make special thanks to Mr. Konarty for connection of IDR group between Edac. He is the head of IDR group in the UK. He's a barrister in London and specializing in international dispute resolution. He acted as a counsel arbitrator and mediator in Abu Dhabi, Beijing, Lagos, London, New York, Shanghai, Singapore, Stockholm, and Washington, D.C., including many institutions such as LCA, ICC, ICA, AAA, CTAC, Stockholm, and Lagos and London Metal Exchange. He has great experience in complex international high-valued cases, including the recent ones is an oil dispute according to Icc Rules, mediation in Singapore according to London institution, mediator in a dispute in sea oil drilling in the North Sea, and also an arbitrator between Spanish and Nigerian parties, which all have antitrust proceedings. So all speakers has wide of experience, so it's very great to listen all of you. And now I would like to present Anthony Konarty to the floor. Thank you very much, Anthony. Now, floor is yours. Just need to unmute.
Unmute.
Okay, Serhat, have you got me now?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Serhat, what I would like to deal with now, the topic I'm going to speak on is the future of petroleum-related arbitration following the pandemic, and ask whether a question which Dorothy has raised, whether we're going to be faced with perhaps the hybrid hearing. I'm going to talk about the challenge facing petroleum-related arbitration in the age of COVID-19. I'd like to stress that the views are those of an English lawyer looking at the effect of the pandemic on commerce generally, on lawyers and the English court system, and on international arbitration, and on the steps being taken by various international dispute resolutions institutions to deal with the impact of the virus. Edac has my paper, which I think they will distribute after today. That paper looks at international disputes in which I've acted as advocate, arbitrator, or mediator. I'm finally going to seek to compare what actually happened in those cases with what might have happened in a COVID-19 scenario. Two of those disputes were mediation cases, but dispute resolution by mediation I'm also going to look at because of the step clauses, those clauses in which a contract requires an attempt by the parties to settle a dispute by mediation before proceeding to arbitration, only if the mediation process fails to produce a settlement. And finally, as I look at the future of what may be happening in the post-pandemic area, will we switch to remote hearings, or perhaps to a mixture of face-to-face hearings and remote hearings, what Dorothy has called a hybrid hearing? First of all, I'm going to look at the effect on commerce. Just very briefly, the effect of the pandemic on commerce generally, few areas have been unscathed. I'll just take one example in the UK. There's an estimate that the property market in the UK was badly affected to the extent that there were some 373,000 transactions on hold in the UK with a total value of 82 billion GBP, English pounds. Then looking at the effect on lawyers, the effect of the pandemic on lawyers is one which affects the economy of the UK. David Lammy, who is the UK Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, says that getting lawyers back to work is crucial for restarting the economy and beginning the recovery after months in lockdown. And what he said was this: the UK has the second largest legal sector in the world, second only to the US. It contributes almost 60 billion English pounds GBP in gross value to the UK economy each year. And it supports 550,000 full-time employees. He says that English law is one of our strongest global exports, used in commercial contracts internationally, making London the top choice for arbitration in this crisis. It has been a world-leading innovator. Well, he obviously said that before he knew about Edac. Then going on to look at the effect of the coronavirus on international arbitration. I'm going to look at existing procedures and arbitral institutions, the provisions that they make for remote processes, and then the guidance notes that some of those institutions have issued. Now, my experience in the conduct of an international arbitration, whether it's institutional or ad hoc, is that there are various procedures which are already used, which may be labeled remote. The existing procedures, for example, acting as arbitrator and advocate, my experience in international arbitrations under the rules of various organizations like the LCIA, ICC, the AAA, CTAC, Chartered Institute, Stockholm, and so on, is that we're using, or we have been using, telephone conferences, for example, in preliminary meetings where the tribunal and the parties plan the future conduct of the arbitration, at a vital stage of an arbitration, and then using emails throughout the course of the arbitration and communications between the parties and the tribunal. Then next, the service by the parties by email of written submissions on issues arising during the course of the arbitration, and then the issue by the tribunal of procedural orders, dealing with matters like pleadings, document disputes, red fern schedules, witness statements, factual and expert, and directions on matters leading to a hearing, such as pre-hearing submissions. Now, the international arbitral institutions, as I say, already make provision for remote processes. These range from documents-only arbitration to institutional rules, which make provision for the use of remote processes within an arbitration. And with parties in different countries and in different time zones, such remote procedures are of considerable help in the conduct of international arbitrations. There are many examples, and I select just a few of them, arbitral institutions providing for remote processes. In the paper I've mentioned the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, LCIA, ICC in Paris, CTAC in Beijing, AAA in New York. I'll just refer to the LCIA and the ICC because both of those institutions have recently updated their rules to make provision for remote processes. The LCIA, for example, in Article 19.2 of their new rules, as to form, they say a hearing may take place in person or virtually by conference call, video conference, or using other communication technology with participants in one or more geographical places. The ICC rules, which are subject to further changes, but which will come into force on the 1st of January 2021, like the updated LCIA rules, their 2021 rules will make provision for remote hearings. For example, their Article 26.1 states that the arbitral tribunal may decide, after consulting with the parties and on the basis of the relevant facts and circumstances of the case, that any hearing will be conducted by physical attendance or remotely by video conference, telephone, or other appropriate means of communication. So both of them have now made provision for remote hearings. Some of the institutions have also issued guidance notes independently of changes in the ICC and the LCIA rules, guidance notes on what to do in the COVID-19 situation. I've mentioned a number of these in my paper, Chartered Institute, the ICC, CTAC, AAA, but I'll just mention the ICC. They published guidance notes on possible measures aimed at mitigating the effect of COVID-19. And that their guidance note sets out matters such as agreeing the list of participants, agreeing the number of participants in a particular room, whether there should be a 360-degree view for all participating rules. One of the points which is relevant in particular to the examination, the cross-examination of witnesses. I'm going to go on now and look at some examples of international disputes in cases in which I've acted and look at what actually happened in those cases and then compare that with what might happen in a COVID-19 scenario. As I've already mentioned, international arbitral institutions have already made provision for remote processes. These range from document-only arbitrations to the institutional rules which make provision for the use of remote processes within an arbitration. And with parties in different countries and different time zones, such remote procedures are of considerable help in the conduct of international arbitrations. I'm going to take 4 examples of disputes in which I've been involved and seek to compare them with what might happen in COVID-19. The first one was an ad hoc petroleum-related arbitration under the rules of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, in which I was sitting as sole arbitrator. The seat of the arbitration was London. The English Arbitration Act applied. The arbitral process followed the usual course, exchange of emails, service of pleadings, production of documents, provisions relating to expert witnesses, submissions at various stages, and so on. Those stages of the arbitration could all be regarded as remote. None of them involve face-to-face meetings. But at later stages of the arbitration, face-to-face meetings did take place. Some involved the tribunal with lawyers only. Some involved the tribunal with lawyers, clients, and witnesses. Some involved parties traveling to London from various parts of the world. Some involved cross-examination of witnesses. Now, in a COVID-19 area, could those face-to-face meetings have actually taken place remotely? If you leave aside the possible objections from any party insisting on an oral hearing, it seems to me the answer must be yes. For example, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, like many institutions, supports remote hearings and has issued guidelines in relation to such hearings. Admittedly, problems involving the examination of witnesses is one of the issues which is consistently raised in relation to the remote process. But even in that respect, there's guidance available. The usual concern is that there is another person in the room coaching the witness. And the suggestions for dealing with that problem include ensuring that only the witness statement is available to the witness, ensuring that one other person is in the room with the witness. That may be a lawyer. That person might be available to assist the witness in locating documents. And then thirdly, the possibility of having two cameras, one of those cameras to be 360 degrees and sighted behind the witness. The second case I take was a commercial dispute under the AAA arbitration rules, in which I sat on a three-person tribunal. Again, much of the process was remote in the sense that the early stages of the tribunal and later stages involved electronic and telephone exchanges, but other stages of the arbitration then involved oral hearings taking place in Washington and New York. Now, could those oral hearings have taken place remotely? And again, I say the answer is yes. The American Arbitration Association's International Center for Dispute Resolution has produced a model order and procedure for a virtual hearing via video conferencing. Then next, I mentioned two petroleum-related disputes, but cases in which I acted as sole mediator. And I mention these cases because of the close relationship between arbitration and mediation brought about by the use of the step clause. Now, in a step clause, mediation is to be used as part of what you might describe as a filter process. You first try mediation first, and only if that fails do you then move on to arbitration. And the type of contractual provision that can achieve this result will be along the lines that in the event of a dispute, the parties will seek to reach agreement through mediation, possibly under the auspices of a named mediation institution. But if the mediation fails, and there's probably a time limit specified, the dispute will then proceed to arbitration, again, possibly under the rules of a named institution. And I've set out in my paper some thoughts on the mediation process and how a mediator may seek to steer the parties to terms of settlement that will suit all of them. And including in that process is the use of the caucus sessions, where the mediator shuttles between meetings with the parties and where any discussion in those caucus sessions are not revealed by the meeting to the other parties without the express permission of the parties that he's been speaking to. And then I say in the note that it's relevant to note that the mediation of disputes involved similar problems to those that arise in international arbitration, and that the early stages of a mediation will probably be remote as the mediator and the parties deal with the preparation building up to the mediation meeting. But it is at the mediation meeting, probably involving caucus sessions, that the involvement of the mediator becomes particularly significant. Could such mediation hearings, and in particular the caucus sessions, be dealt with remotely? The two cases I mentioned, one took place in Singapore. The parties to that case were Norwegian and Singapore companies. The employer under the contract giving rise to the dispute was a Norwegian drilling company. The operator of an oil drilling rig, commonly described as a jack-up rig, that's a self-contained combination of a drilling rig and a floating barge. The parties couldn't resolve their disputes concerning the works involved under the contract. They wished the mediation to take place in Singapore. The parties' solicitors estimated 3 days should be reserved for the mediation. Party representatives travelled to Singapore from Norway and India, and contact was maintained by telephone throughout with London and other cities. And after 3 days, we reached a settlement. Now, those 3 days involved close personal contact between the mediator and the parties. Could that aspect of the mediation be dealt with remotely, particularly the caucus sessions? I'll look at that question in a minute after going on to the second mediation. This one took place in London and involved North Sea subsea oil drilling structures. The parties there were in dispute concerning subsea oil drilling structures for use in the North Sea. There was a contract between the parties that provided for disputes to be resolved by agreement, if not referred to arbitration, in accordance with the provisions of an arbitration act of a Scandinavian country. And the proceedings were to take place in that country, but conducted in English. The applicable law was the law of the Scandinavian country, and the claims and counterclaims were in the region of $35 million US. The claimant commenced the arbitral proceedings. Partway through the arbitration, the parties decided to seek the resolution of the dispute through mediation, and I was appointed as the sole mediator. They agreed on that taking place in London. Many of the discussions were between the parties, the mediator. Many of those discussions were in the nature of the caucus sessions. Now, could those two mediations have taken place remotely? And I would say yes. The initial preparation stages of the meetings of the mediation were remote. The major stage of the mediations, the hearing and the caucus sessions, could be staged remotely in the same way that you would deal with that in an arbitration. And it's interesting to note that the International Mediation Institute in The Hague, which was set up by organizations like the AAA and the Netherlands Arbitration Institute, they support the use of remote mediation. And let me read to you something that they've said. They said, undoubtedly the flexibility and accessibility that remote mediation offers, it is a simpler and easier option to deliver than all the parties traveling to a venue booked in a particular place at a set time. Travel time and convenience is not a problem. Any accessibility challenges are dealt with from the off, plus venue costs are of course not required. On an international scale, as long as time zones are considered, remote mediation is easy enough to arrange so that it slots into more or less everyone's day as appropriate. In other words, in the same way that international arbitration can be dealt with, is being dealt with now and can be dealt with in the future. So also in cases where, for example, you've got the step-up clauses, you can deal with it by mediation as well. So I would say that energy disputes, whether dealt with by arbitration or mediation, can be staged remotely. The processes are available and they are already being used. Looking to the future now, the conduct of international arbitration is likely to be very different following COVID-19, and the use of virtual hearings of one kind or another is bound to continue. If you leave aside documents-only arbitrations, there are various procedures already in place to assist virtual hearings. The major international arbitral bodies give a wide discretion to arbitrators as to how an arbitration is to be conducted. Some specifically authorize video and telephone conferences. The recently updated ICC and LCA rules now will make specific provision for remote hearings. So the procedures are already available for the conduct of virtual hearings. Will the virtual hearing take over? I don't think so completely. I think it's probably inevitable that more use will be made of remote processes. The cost implications are obvious, particularly given that parties in international arbitrations tend to be based in different parts of the world and operate in different time zones. But if nothing else, there will always be cases where one party in international arbitration wants its day in court. But time will tell what the picture of international arbitration will look like after the epidemic. But it seems reasonably certain that more use will be made of virtual hearings, both purely virtual and hybrid. So thank you for listening, and let me thank Mr. Boscher and Edac for inviting the IDR group to join Edac, and thank you for inviting me and Dorothy and Peter to speak to you today. Thank you. Thank you, Serhat.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It's a great pleasure to listen you again and for this great speech. Now we will continue to our next speaker, Cem Çağatay Orak. Mr. Cem Çağatay Orak is admitted to practice in New York and Turkey. He focuses on dispute resolution and counseling to companies doing business in highly regulated sectors, including energy. He has 20 years of experience in administrative and civil courts, and also acted as a counsel in commercial investment and energy and construction arbitrations under major international rules such as ICC, Icc, LCA, and Untitled. I would like to take floor to Mr. Cem Çağatay. Mr. Çağatay, would you speak in Turkish? If so, I would like to give information that in the bottom of the screen there's an interpretation section, which Mr. Cem Çağatay speak will also translate it into English. Floor is yours, Cem Bey. Teşekkür ederim. Sesinizi açık değil. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction, Serhat Bey. And I will now switch to Turkish, as we discussed before. Enerji uyuşmazlıkları tahkim merkezinin oluşturulması konusunda büyük çaba harcayan Sayın Süleyman Boşça ve Enerji Hukuku Araştırma Enstitüsü Yönetim Kurulu üyelerine bu fırsatı verdikleri için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Tahkimin ve milletler arası tahkimin bazı iddiaları var. O iddialardan bir tanesi de uzmanlık ve etkinlik. Fakat uzmanlık ve etkinlikten bahsettiğimizde sadece bilirkişi raporları eksenindeki uzmanlıktan değil, aslında tahkimin her segmentine sirayet eden bir uzmanlıktan bahsediyoruz. Bu anlamda enerji uyuşmazlıkları tahkim merkezinin milli ve milletler arası tahkim divanı, hakem listesi ve diğer yetkilileri göz önüne alındığında tahkimin bu uzmanlık iddiası anlamında farklılığını yakın tarihte hissettirebileceğini düşünüyorum. Bu kapsamda merkeze, tüm yetkililerine ve çalışanlarına başarılar diliyorum. Sektör içinde yararlı olmasını temenni ederim. Zamanında düşünerek ben konuşmamı aslında ziplenmiş iki ana bölüme ayırdım. Birinci bölümde pandemi dünyasında son dönemdeki gündelik klişeyle trend topik olabilecek konular ya da konseptler hangisidir? Kendimce biraz onlardan bahsetmek istiyorum. İkinci ve son bölümde ise bu trend topik olmaya aday konu ve konseptlerden biri üzerinde biraz daha ayrıntılı bir şekilde durmak istiyorum. Pandeminin farklı hukuki ilişki tiplerinde yeni normaller yarattığı açık. Tahkim yargılaması anlamında da hem yeni tasarımları konuşuyoruz, hem de mevcut tasarımların ya da enstrümanların içinin nasıl daha iyi doldurulabileceğini ya da daha nasıl etkin kullanılabileceğinden bahsediyoruz. Konuşmamın birinci bölümündeki meseleler de aslında biraz bununla ilgili. Yani tahkimdeki mevcut enstrüman ve konseptlerin içinin pandemi dünyasında nasıl daha etkili doldurulabileceğiyle ilgili. Şimdi tabii hep böyle bir maddi hukuk konusu olarak değerlendirilen force majeure konusunda tahkim yargılama kuralları dikkate aldığımızda ya da kurumsal tahkim kurallarını dikkate aldığımızda ilginç bir boşluk ortaya çıktığı görüldü. Bu konuda belki dünyadaki popüler tahkim merkezlerinin kurallarının bile yeterince çevik olmadığı fark edildi ve çoğu zaman son dönemdeki süreç daha ziyade merkezlerin prensip kararlarıyla ya da rehberleriyle yönetildi. Bu anlamda benden önceki konuşmacılar da farklı kontekstlerde buna zaten değinmişti ama özellikle pandeminin yarattığı değişikliklerle beraber yeni konsept ve meselelerin daha sık tartışılacağını düşünüyorum. Onlardan bir tanesi de aslında merkezler arasındaki işbirliğinin arttırılması. Bugüne kadar düşük yoğunluklu olarak gördüğümüz ya da pedagojik düzeyde gördüğümüz dünyadaki tahkim merkezleri arasındaki işbirliği belki tahkim yargılamasının içerisine de sirayet edecek düzeye getirilebilir. Ya da yakın tarihte bunu konuşuyor olabiliriz. Bu tabii pandeminin yarattığı lojistik ve esasa dair sıkıntılardan kaynaklanacaktır çoğu zaman. Yargılama devam ederken tahkim yeriyle fiziksel bağın kopartılması çok bilindik ve olağan bir durum ama pandemi dünyasında belki bunun bir adım daha ileriye götürülerek tahkim yerinin nasıl ve hangi şartlarda değiştirileceği ya da değiştirilmesi gerekip gerekmediği tartışılacak. Bunun için tabii ki taraflar arasındaki tahkim sözleşmesi, tahkim yeri hukuku ve varsa uygulanacak tahkim yargılama kurallarının da tabii bize ne söylediği önemli olacak. Pandeminin tabii ortaya çıkardığı çok tipik global etkiler oldu. Tahkim yargılaması içerisindeki kritik enstrümanlardan bir tanesi de geçici hukuki himaye tedbirleri. Ben pandemi dünyasında bu tedbirlerin de hem nicelik, hem nitelik hem de kapsam anlamında farklılaşabileceğini düşünüyorum. Bu tabii ilginçtir ki dünyadaki tahkim merkezleri özelinde kendi rekabetçi yapılarını ortaya koymaları bakımından da bir fırsat olabilir. Elbette ki bir tedbirin sayısını arttırmak, bunu çeşitlendirmek büyük ölçüde yine tahkim şartına ve tahkime uygulanacak hukuk kurallarına bağlı. Buradan hareketle, yani bu tedbir müessesesinden hareketle aslında bir konuya daha değinmek istiyorum. Tahkimde özellikle dava dışı üçüncü kişiler ve başta devlet mahkemeleri olmak üzere kamu kurumlarıyla ilişkiler pandemi dünyasında da çok ilginç bir hal alabilir. Özellikle yargılamanın lojistik engelleri belki bir nebze işte sanal duruşmalarla aşılabilecek gibi gözükse de özellikle belge üretimi ve tedbir kararlarının uygulanması anlamında belki dava dışı üçüncü kişiler ve devlet mahkemelerinin tahkime biraz daha yardımcı olması gündeme gelebilir. Pandemi konsept olarak belki bunu tamamen düzenlemez ama bu kapıyı açması için bir fırsat olarak kullanılabilir. Bunlar tahkim yargılamasının ilerleyen dönemlerde önemli konuları olacak gibi duruyor. Tabii konuşmanın ikinci bölümüne geçerken tahkimdeki bu popüler ya da trend topik olmaya namzet meselelerden bir tanesi de tabii sözleşmelerin uyarlanması. Özellikle enerji sektöründen bahsediyoruz. Enerji sektöründe sözleşmenin uyarlanması ne demek? Tahkimler sözleşmeyi uyarlayabilir mi konusu da özellikle pandeminin yol açtığı problemler nedeniyle bence özellikle ihtilafların çözümü alanında uğraşan pratisyenler için bence hayatlarının ortasına yerleşecek gibi duruyor. Sözleşmenin uyarlanması tabii önemli bir konsept. Öteden beri önemli bir konsept ama pandemiyle beraber bunun kapsamı çok daha gelişti ve değişti. Enerji sektöründe ilk yatırım maliyetleri çok yüksek. Enerji üretim kaynaklarını ya da üretim hattını elinde bulunduranlar ilk yatırım maliyetlerinin ortaya çıkarttığı risklerin dağılımını da belirlemek istiyorlar. Bunun dışında bir takım finansman endişeleri ya da politik riskler de bu sözleşmenin dizaynı konusunda bazı özel enstrümanlara ihtiyaç gösteriyor. Tabii enerji sektöründe çok bilindik, uzun süredir uygulanan ve sektör pratiği haline gelen bir takım hukuksal konseptler var. Al ya da öde yükümlülüğü gibi, fiyat ayarlamaları gibi, referans fiyatın değişilmesi için başvurulacak formüller gibi. Fakat ilginçtir ki bazen sözleşmede açıkça yazan ve uyarlamaya imkan veren bu hükümlerin bile değişen şartlar çerçevesinde tekrar yorumlanması gerekebiliyor. Bu tabii karşılaşabileceğiniz, özellikle uygulamacı olarak karşılaşabileceğiniz en makul senaryo herhalde. Bunun biraz daha zor olanı ve komplike olanı sözleşmenin bu konuda sessiz kalması, hatta uyarlamayı her yönüyle kapatması. Bu tahkim yargılamasında tabii çok daha kritik ve zor bir mesele olarak karşımıza çıkıyor. Tabii klişe olarak sözleşmenin uyarlanmasından bahsediyoruz ama tam olarak neyin uyarlanmasını istiyoruz ya da hakemler neyi uyarlayacak? konusu da oldukça önemli. Çünkü burada hakemin bir yargısal aktivizm göstererek sözleşmeyi istediği gibi uyarlamasının ötesinde aslında tarafların hakem heyetinden ne istediği konusu da öne çıkıyor. Hatta bazen sözleşmedeki bir boşluk doldurma mı, sözleşmenin belirsiz bir hükmünün yorumlanması mı, sözleşmedeki temel mükellefiyetlerin değiştirilmesi mi, bunların zamanının değiştirilmesi mi ya da sözleşmedeki yaptırımların revize edilmesi mi? Bunların hepsi aslında uyarlama içerisinde düşünülebilir. Ama hukuku lingüistikten düşünmek mümkün değil. Bu anlamda hakem heyetinden ne istendiği ve hakem heyetinin gerçek anlamda neye karar vermesi gerektiği gibi meseleler uygulamada oldukça önemli oluyor. Bu anlamda tabii bir sözleşmenin, özellikle diyelim bir uzun dönemli bir gaz tedarik sözleşmesinin uyarlanmasına hakemlerin karar verip veremeyeceği konusu tabii bir jurisdiction konusu. Yani bir temelde bir yetki meselesi. Bu yapılabilir mi gibi global bir soruya ex ante ve global bir cevap vermek de aslında çok kolay ve mümkün değil. Çünkü burada çok fazla dinamik var dikkate alınması gereken. En başta taraflar arasındaki sözleşme, tahkim anlaşmasının içeriği, esasa uygulanacak hukuk, tahkime uygulanacak hukuk ve hatta tahkimdeki yargılama kuralları. Bunların hepsinin bir bütün olarak değerlendirilmesi gerekiyor. Fakat şöyle kıta Avrupası ve Anglo-Amerikan pratiğine baktığınızda aşağı yukarı bu konudaki minimumları görebiliyorsunuz. Bu konudaki minimumlardan kastım şu: sözleşmede en azından açıkça yasaklayıcı bir hüküm olmadığı takdirde, esas uygulanacak hukukta ya da tahkim yargılamasına uygulanacak hukukta lex arbitra'da açıkça yasaklayıcı bir hüküm olmadığı takdirde prensip olarak aslında sözleşmenin uyarlanmasına konusunda hakemlerin yetkili olduğu şeklinde genel bir yaklaşım olduğunu söylemek herhalde yanlış olmaz. Türkiye'deki uygulamaya baktığınızda bu konuyla en azından tahkim yargılamasında meselenin nasıl olacağı ile ilgili bir yüksek mahkeme kararını doğrudan en azından rastlamak mümkün olmasa da kararın gerekçesinde, yani dikta bölümünde bunun mümkün olabileceğini söyleyen bazı ifadeleri rastlamak mümkün. İsviçre Federal Mahkemesi tipik olarak önüne gelen bir olayda doğalgaz tedarik sözleşmesinde bunun mümkün olabileceğini karar vermiş durumda. Bunu biliyoruz. İsviçre elbette bir model kanun ülkesi değil. Türkiye bir model kanun, ancestral model kanun ülkesi ama İsviçre medeni kanun ve borçlar kanunu teori ve pratiği dikkate alındığında İsviçre'nin önemli bir örnek olduğunu düşündüğüm için bunu söyledim. Onun haricinde bu genel kanıyı tabii besleyen hususlardan bir tanesi yine tahkimin kendi enstrümanları. O da hakemlerin ex aequo bono ya da amiable compositeur olarak karar verdiği, yani hakkaniyete göre veya dostane arabulucu şeklinde karar verme konusunda açıkça yetkilendirildiği hallerde uyarlama konusunda hakemlerin esnekliğinin daha fazla olduğu yönünde genel bir kanı olduğunu da herhalde söylemek yanlış olmayacak. Şimdi özellikle enerji sektöründeki uyuşmazlıklarda tabii uyarlamadan bahsediyoruz ama zaten konvansiyonel uyarlama hükümlerinin bize yetip yetmeyeceğini de konuşmak lazım herhalde bu noktada. Yani bir sözleşmede özellikle girdi maliyetleri konusunda bir eskalasyon hükmü olabilir. Bu kendi içerisinde özel bir konuyla ilgili özel bir uyarlama maddesidir. Ama bu sizin için yeterli olmayabilir. Change in law konsepti, yani mevzuat değişikliklerinin o sözleşmeyi nasıl etkileyeceği konusu tarafların üzerinde mutabık kaldığı bir hüküm olmakla beraber onun sizin sözleşmenize etkisinin tam olarak ne olduğu belirli olmayabilir. Bu gibi aslında çok tipik ve geleneksel uyarlama hükümleri olsa da bunlar bile bazen ihtiyacı karşılamaya yetmeyebilir. Çünkü uyarlamadan bahsettiğiniz zaman en azından hani benim hukuk dünyamda tabii bir sözleşmenin uyarlanması demek aslında sözleşmedeki parça parça parametrelerden ziyade kolektif olarak sözleşmenin ekonomik dengesinin ortadan kalkmasıyla ilgili bir durum. o ekonomik denge girdilerdeki eskalasyonla giderilebilecek bir denge bozukluğu olmayabilir. O zaten aslında sözleşmenin uyarlanması konseptinin önemli ve kritik tarafı da bu. Son olarak da bir kamu düzeniyle ilgili birkaç meseleye değinmek gerekiyor. Biraz önce bahsettiğim o change in law konsepti ki pandemide bunu sıklıkla aslında gördük. Pandemideki kamusal sağlık tedbirlerinin sözleşmenin uygulanması sırasında neleri beraberinde getirebileceği meselesi de aslında ciddi bir itilaf kalemi olarak ortaya çıkıyor. Bu enerji sektöründeki sözleşmelerde ve enerji santral yapım sözleşmelerinde süre ve maliyet bazlı itilaflara tabii yol açıyor. Ya da bu itilaflara yol açan bir sürü mesele varken onların yanında da bir unsur olarak pandemiye eklemiş durumdayız. Tabii change in law meselesi bir sözleşmeyi nasıl etkileyecek konusu da o sözleşmenin drafting ile ilgili bir konu. Yani yazımı ile ilgili bir konu ve tarafların başta neyi amaçladıklarıyla ilgili bir konu. Fakat bunu şuna bağlamak istiyorum. Hakemler sözleşmeyi uyarlarken change in law'un sözleşmede nasıl tanımlandığı, onun sözleşmeyi nasıl etkileyeceğini, bunun uyarlama konseptine gelip girmeyeceğini ve o konuda yetkisi olup olmadığını da tabii değerlendirmek zorunda. Yani mesele aslında çok katmanlı ve basit bir mesele değil. Fakat aslında bir o kadar da kendi içerisinde ilginç hukuki meseleleri üreten ve enerji sektöründe yakın gelecekte de çok daha fazla üreteceğini düşündüğümüz bir konu sözleşmenin uyarlanması. Son olarak tabii uyarlama iyidir, kötüdür. Uyarlama çok iyidir ya da çok kötüdür gibi böyle bir genelleme yapmak da çok mümkün olmuyor. Hatta sözleşmenin başında uyarlama konusunda çok daha fazla ısrarcı olan bir taraf, İtilaf ortaya çıktıktan sonra o uyarlama hükmünün aleyhine çalıştığını da görebilir. O yüzden ex-ante bir şekilde sözleşmenin başında benim için uyarlama çok iyidir, onu mutlaka sözleşmeye dahil etmeliyim meselesinden ziyade aslında sektörel dinamikler, ülkenin dinamikleri, enerji sektörü gibi dünyadaki global oyuncuların aktivitelerinden de oldukça yakından etkilenen bir sektörde bütüncül bir bakış açısına ihtiyaç var. Tabii bütüncül bir bakış açısı sihirli bir kelime gibi gelebilir. Bunu yönetmek de çok kolay değil. O yüzden de aslında enerji sektöründeki itilaflardan bahsettiğimizde ve enerji sektöründeki takimden bahsettiğimizde sözleşmelerin yazım aşamasında hukukçuların, teknik ekibin, finansman ekibinin, muhasebe ekibinin, çevre regülasyon ekibinin gerçekten ortak bir çalışmasına ihtiyaç oluyor. Bu sayede en azından belki mükemmel bir sözleşme draft etmeniz, mükemmel bir sözleşme yazmanız mümkün olmasa bile en azından görece riskleri minimize etme imkanınız oluyor. Çok teşekkür ediyorum sabrınız ve ilginiz için.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz Can Bey. Bu güzel sunum için çok aydınlatıcı ve keyifli bir sunumdu. Teşekkür ediyorum. Thank you very much again. So now we are in the session for question and answers. I see that we have a question from Mr. Hartwell. The question is, as to force majeure, is there any scope for expansion of a list using the justem generis argument? To our speakers, is there anyone who would like to join, comment?
I think this possibly comes from something that I was saying about exclusive lists.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the point, but I think the answer is no. The clauses I'm talking about say the only things which are force majeure are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can then expand that using justem generis. If they say what I would call an example list, which you also see quite a lot of, that say it's got to be unforeseeable, beyond the control of the parties. Examples include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you can expand to say, well, that means that 7, 8, and 9 are covered as well. And that's right. But on the absolute exclusive lists, I don't see how you get round the argument that the parties have agreed that only these matters should be force majeure, and then try to say, but we want some others as well. Worth a try, but my answer is no.
Thank you very much. Peter? Is there any addition? Well, is there any questions from our audience, our panelists? We'll be more than welcome to receive. And I also would like to, by this time, I would like to note our international board members, Professor Don Wallace and Professor Mani Rızaman, also sent their regards that they were not able to join us in this launch meeting. So thank you very much to Professor Wallace and Professor Mani Rızaman. Is there any questions further? If not, I would like to thank you very much, speakers. Thank you very much, Mr. Konerti, Mr. Farman, Ms. Ufot, and Mr. Orak. Now, I would like to close the session. Thank you very much for your great speeches. So I would like to now give the floor to Mr. Süleyman Boşça for a closing speech. Floor is yours, Mr. Boşça. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Serhat. It was an amazing day today. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mr. Foreman, Mrs. Ufot, Mr. Konerti, and Mr. Orak for your contribution to the webinar. We benefit a lot from the information and thoughts you provided. After launching assembly, now a new race is in front of us, to introduce and promote Edac in the international arena is very important. In the coming days, we will organize seminars, webinars, and other meetings. Your all contribution to this is very important and valuable for us. I would like to thank again to all participants for their attending. I would also thank to all board members and arbitrators and for their very kind and generous contribution to the launching assembly of. Let's keep in touch. Thank you very much. See you next time. Thank you.
So thank you very much again to all. It was a great launch event and panel. So I also thank you very much to everybody. Best regards, kind regards. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Asmalık, saygılar, hayırlı günler diliyorum.